So, I was asked to do a video on my story. Everybody got a story behind their eyes. And after talking to somebody that's important to me, their words kind of gave me the push I need to agree to it. Their words were, "I've came far enough. My story might help others." So I don't remember much about my childhood. I'm still working on inner healing and working on healing those childhood traumas. And funny enough, the only childhood memories I remember are negative ones. So I remember my twin sisters coming home when they were born. They were hooked to heart machines, oxygen, all that stuff. I remember being just a little thing and I was riding my bike and I didn't know how to work the brakes. I hit the back of a truck and the bumper split me open. I had stitches. I remember when I was 7, I lived on this farm and it was the type deal to where my parents helped take care of the farm in exchange for rent for our house. And it was my birthday, and my dad told my mom to send me over to the barn. He had a birthday present for me. So I got to the barn, and he squirted me in the face with the cow's milk. That was a good memory. That was funny. I also remember when I was 7, I got molested quite a few times. That turned into something ugly. I didn't tell anybody because I feared that I'd be in trouble, or I feared that my family would look down on me and not want nothing to do with me anymore because it was a family friend that it was happening from. I remember being very unhappy. We moved from house to house to house to house, so I was always changing schools, always had to make new friends, and eventually it got to the point to where I didn't want to do it no more. I just kind of shut myself down and I would shy away from everybody. I became the quiet one in class because I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't try to make friends with nobody. I kind of sat alone. I did make some pretty cool friends though, and we've kept contact throughout the years. I'm not going to mention any names in this video because it's not fair for them without their permission to mention any names. I got in junior high and my go-to was any kind of attention I could get. You know, I suffered so much in my childhood. I watched my dad disappear for days at a time, weeks at a time, so he could go out on his binges because my dad was an alcoholic. He wouldn't come home. My mom would struggle to have to, put food in the house to feed us. She would struggle to get us school clothes, school shoes, stuff like that. And it got to the point to where I just kind of shut down. I never told anybody I shut down, but I shut down. I'd watched enough. I watched my mom struggle, and I just shut down. So when I hit probably 6th grade, 7th grade, somewhere around there, I turned to anywhere I could get attention is where I would get the attention. Because with my dad coming and going, in and out of jail my whole life, I never knew if my dad was okay. There was times he would disappear just to go drinking. There was times he would disappear because he ended up getting locked up. My mom worked all the time because with my dad in and out of jail and my dad disappearing, she had to take care of us girls. So it was kind of, I would just turn wherever I could turn for attention, even if it was negative attention. And a lot of it was bad, a lot of it was negative, but I stuck it out and I dealt with it because it was attention. And the older I got, the worse it got. When I was 14, my mom and dad finally split up. My dad took off to where I'm from. And back with where his family's from, he became a full-blown alcoholic then. No longer worked, no longer had a care in the world. He went to court and gave his rights to us kids up. And the judge asked him multiple times, "You sure this is what you want to do?" And just like that, he gave his rights up right in front of us. It was almost like he threw us away. He didn't want nothing to do with us. So my mom struggled raising us, but she raised us. My stepdad come into the picture. Damn good guy. He took very good care of us. Anything we needed or wanted, he made sure we had it. He was always there, no matter what. But I had already, by that point in time, I had already went through so much that I was in like a rebellious stage. I didn't give two fucks. I didn't care if I was in and out of trouble. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care what I did. I didn't care if I was okay, if anybody else was okay. I went through a huge rebellious stage. So I went to stay with my aunt for a little while. When staying with my aunt, me and my cousins would sneak a bunch of alcohol and stuff. Because that's what I grew up seeing. That's what they grew up seeing. You know, their parents were the same way. Big into drinking and stuff. So that's what we grew up seeing. I started missing school all the time. Eventually, my mom caught on to it. She knew I was missing school and stuff. And I went back home. Well, that didn't get any better because I was in and out of trouble in school. I didn't care about school. I wasn't doing schoolwork. I wasn't participating in school. When I would go to school, I wasn't even in school because I would roam the halls or I would leave school and then go back. And it was just a downward spiral that I couldn't get out of. I clicked with the wrong click. I clicked with the click, and I know I'm responsible for my own actions. It's nobody's fault but my own. I chose to hang out with the ones who the trouble followed. I just didn't care. I had no care in the world. I wasn't happy inside. I wasn't happy with myself. I put on this image that everybody wanted me to put on. I eventually met someone, put on this image that, hey, I'm happy, blah, 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 blah. I wasn't happy. I was young and dumb and I was drinking and I ended up just settling because I was getting that attention. I was getting attention, even though it was negative attention with being screamed at and told what to do and all that crap. I was being given attention, so I settled. Drinking played a big role in it. Never wanted my mom to know because I didn't want her to know I was becoming my father. I ended up pregnant with my first son. He saved me. He definitely saved me. He's my whole world. I stopped with the wanting to drink all the time. And it was tough because he was my first one. He didn't come with an instruction manual. I had to learn on my own. And I did. You know, I was with this person and you think it's a team effort and it's going to be okay and this baby's going to change everything and this baby's going to fill this void that you got, and you know, you think it's going to change the fact that you were terrified your whole life to let the world know who you truly were, and you think that this baby's going to change that. This baby's not going to make me feel grossed out by being with a man. This baby's going to fix everything. And it didn't fix nothing. It only made it a little worse because now not only was I struggling, now not only was I having all these inner feelings that I was hiding from the world, but now on top of it, I was struggling because I was the one feeding the baby. I was the one changing the diapers. I was the one scrounging money together to buy clothes and food and you name it. I was doing it on my own. And next thing you know, boom, there I am. I'm pregnant again. So I had my second son. He was supposed to be a girl, by the way, but it came out a little boy. And it just got harder and harder and harder. But by that time, I had become addicted to kind of like a sexual addiction. The more I would lay down, the less I felt guilty. Not so much the less I felt guilty, the less I felt the negative effects that I would feel sitting there looking around like, what am I doing? Why am I hiding who I am? Why am I pretending to be something I'm not? I'm putting myself through hell and I'm making others happy just so I'm miserable. And I lived that way for many years. Many years. I got 5 beautiful kids out of it. You know, if I could go back and change anything, I would have been real from the jump and I'd been honest from the jump about who I was, what I wanted to be, who I was attracted to, I would have never tried to put on this false image, but I would never change the fact of my 5 kids. My 5 kids saved me. My kids are my whole world, and they're all I got. They're truly all I got. Long story short, I lived with years of being controlled. I lived with years of abuse. I also struggled with a lot of mental illnesses because growing up wasn't exactly easy. I still had no idea where my dad was. I talked to my mom, but not as often as a kid should talk to their mom. For the simple fact, I hid a lot from my mom. I didn't want my mom to disown me because I wasn't the perfect little girl that she gave birth to. I didn't have the perfect little curls that she wanted. I wanted to cut my hair off. I wanted to dress the way I dress. And I feared my mom wouldn't accept me. So my mom I shied away from. I knew my mom would be able to pick out things that were going on in my life because I had watched it my whole life. That became my normal. What I watched my mom go through was my new normal. Being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, who I could talk to, who I couldn't talk to. That became my new normal. I lived it my whole life. I watched it. That was my normal. And I knew my mom would pick it out. I knew she would pick up on it, so I avoided her. I eventually found my dad. He was living in a tent. He was homeless, living in a tent. Kept the contact. You know, even though he gave me and my sisters up, and even though he walked out on us, and we heard those words that he gave us up, I still chose to keep contact with my dad. Because I love my dad. I love my mom. And my stepdad's an amazing person. You know, I didn't want him to know I found my dad because he stepped in and took care of me like a dad should. So I feared I would hurt him. But I kept the contact with my dad through my grandma. She would give and relay messages. I eventually took a trip down to see my dad. My grandma had a cookout. She used to have them every year until she passed away. I took my kids down to meet my dad. All of them. Over the time, my dad ended up getting into this shack. He had his own little spot. A little shack, but hey, it was a roof over his head, right? Running water. Even though the water was dirty, it was running water. So my dad brought up the idea. I missed out on so much. You know, I missed out on the kids. You driving, you this, you that. He brought up the idea of moving in with me. Instantly, without even thinking about it, I jumped on it because I missed my dad. I truly missed my dad. He was gone most of my whole life. Sure, let's go. All right, well, on the first, when I get my check, we'll be good to go. All right. I thought it was drunk talk. Close to the first, it was like the day before. My phone rings. Hey, Tank. What's up, Dad? You coming tomorrow? I sure am. So I got a trailer and I hooked the trailer to my car. Took off down the road. I moved my dad in with me. When I moved my dad in with me, he had a couple episodes that something wasn't right. He needed to go to the doctor. So finally, after a year of trying to convince him, he finally went to the doctor. He had lung cancer. Well, because he waited so long, he knew this over a year ago. But he was scared. He didn't want to go to the doctor. So because he waited so long, it had spread to his head. We went through all the treatments. We went through so many doctor's appointments. Long story short, I lost my dad in May. He come back into my life just to leave again. I lost him in May. I hold resentment towards my mom for that because I feel like my mom kept us from him. He might have had a drinking problem, and he might not have been the best dad, but she kept us from him. So I hold a lot of resentment for that. I also hold a lot against my dad because how are you going to look your kids in the face and just give them up? And I know I shouldn't hold resentment. I know I shouldn't, but I do. So along comes this person, amazing. Amazing in every way. I finally found that bond I was looking for my whole life. I didn't have to pretend to be anything I wasn't. I could be honest. I could be just me. I didn't have to be anything but me. I didn't have to pretend no more. And it was an amazing feeling. But I couldn't let myself get attached. I had to keep a wall up. This person had a serious drug addiction. So I had to keep this wall up because I knew my babies couldn't be around that stuff. I knew I couldn't bring her around. I knew I couldn't take my kids around her. I had to keep this huge wall up. And I did. Finally, 4 years later, she's clean. She's no longer, that horrible drug addict anymore. She's doing good in life. She's living back home with her mom. She went to rehab. She's doing really good. And she was good for months. One thing led to another, and I gave her that chance. I said, all right, it's time. It's been almost 5 years now. It's time that the world knows that we're together. You're doing good. You're doing amazing. It's everything's okay. I no longer have the fear of my kids being around you, stuff like that. I lost her. She slipped up. She slipped up and relapsed and overdosed, and I lost her. I sat next to her hospital bed as she was on life support for 3 days. All 3 days I stayed by her side. The 4th day we had no choice but to let them unplug it. She wasn't the one to live the rest of her life on machines, keeping her alive and in a home. So they unplugged it. And I sat next to her bed as she took her last breath. So once again, boom, somebody comes in and just like that, they go. I struggle with abandonment issues. That's a big one for me. I struggle, and I struggle bad. I always fear everybody's just going to leave me. And because of that, I'll allow myself to get this attachment, and I don't know how to not get that attachment. I struggle with agoraphobia. I don't like leaving my house. I think the world's out to get me. Like, the world's always going to judge me. So I'm just safer at my house. I don't like going nowhere. Ever since I was little, I could be sitting on my bed. We lived in this one house, and it was a creepy old house. And I could see people walking up and down the hallway. And there's an old attic. It was a big old farmhouse. There was an old attic. I could see these people walking up and down the attic steps, and I could hear them talking, and I thought I was crazy, so I never said nothing. So we moved into another spot, and that spot wasn't no different. It was an old lady. She should always walk up and down the hallway between my room and my sister's room. I told my mom about that, and they just said, oh, it's nothing, this house, we were just, this house is just haunted, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, when I lost my person, that really opened my eyes pretty much to awaken me. That's why I am where I am today. I no longer dwell on the negative. I let the negative go. I try to stay positive. It could be the worst thing in the world, and I'm going to sit there and try to find a positive out of it instead of dragging the negative on. I've been through so much in my 38 years that not everybody will go through, and that's okay. I don't know how to heal from some of the childhood traumas I have. And I know we're not supposed to hold on to emotions. Feeling is healing, like crying is healing. But how do you let go? How do you let go of feelings you have? When I lost my dad, I had to swallow my pride and hide all the resentment I had, all the anger I had. And the answer to my questions will never be answered. Why? Why did you give us up? Why did you walk away? So you and mom's marriage ended, but why did you give up on us kids? Those questions will never be answered. And I don't know how to let go of those. Just like I don't know how to ask my mom, even though he was a bad dad, as you say, even though you know he had a drinking problem, why? Why keep him away? Why every time he tried to come around did you have him arrested? I just need to let those feelings go, but something deep inside of me keeps me holding on to them. I try to process everything with a positive outlook. I try to no longer hold on to the hurt, no longer hold on to the pain. I no longer settle. I no longer deal with situations or people just because I'm getting that attention or just because it's a reaction, even if it's a negative reaction. I no longer do that. It's got to be positive. If you're not positive for my life, then I don't need you around. I don't. Because I've had enough negative to last a lifetime and I don't need any more negative. There's so much more I could say, but I've already said enough, and I'm not fully comfortable with sharing a lot of it with the world. Maybe that'll be another video someday. But for now, out of this whole video, my message to you is never settle. Never put up with something or someone just because you're comfortable or it's what you're used to. Because in the long run, it's not going to end well. In the long run, it's going to do more damage to you than anything. And you are the most important thing to yourself. You know, I learned that how can I be the best parent possible to my kids when I'm struggling so bad or that I'm hurting so deep? You know, you have to, there comes a time when you have to put yourself first. And if you can't do it for you, do it for your kids. You know what I mean? Like, you're their biggest fan. Like, they look up to you. They count on you. They watch your every move. Do you want them living the same lifestyle you lived? Do you want them going through the same thing you did? You know, if you have a daughter, do you want your daughter going through the same abuse you went through? Because I know I sure don't want mine. I don't want mine experience a quarter of what I went through. That's just not right. It's just not fair. Look up to yourself. Open up your heart. Open up your mind. It's a whole new beautiful world out there. You can't keep settling. You can't keep dealing with things like that. And along your way, there's times you're going to feel alone. There's times you're going to feel nobody understands. There's times you're going to feel that you have nobody, and that's okay. You have yourself. You have yourself. You don't need to prove yourself or prove what you're doing to anybody but yourself. Do it for you. Do it because you're an amazing person and you deserve more. And that's all I got.